Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back. So today I'm going to be comparing this UCANBE Magic Spell palette to the Lime Crime Venus XL2. So when I first spotted this over on Amazon, I was so excited because I've never seen a Lime Crime Venus XL2 dupe before. And I had bought this one back over the winter time, I want to say. And when I showed it in my Sunday haul, a lot of you guys were saying how beautiful you thought it was. It really is a very unique color scheme. But a lot of you also said that you didn't want to support Lime Crime, that you don't really like what the brand stands for, and I totally get that. So it's nice to have an alternative, and honestly, it's just nice to have an alternative anyway that's more affordable, because the Lime Crime version is $58 at Ulta, which is quite steep for an eyeshadow palette. This one is $13.99, so definitely more affordable, and I know a few of you guys told me that you already picked this up during Amazon Prime Day, because I think it went down to like $10. So what I'm going to do is just go through both palettes, show you some comparison swatches, and then I'm going to do a look. I'm wearing one on one eye and one on the other, like I usually do, and then later on in the video you'll be able to see which one is which. But for now, go ahead and just try to guess which palette is on which eye. So anyway, let's jump in and get started. So first, let's go ahead and just compare the packaging. So both of them have pink and green packaging with gold accents, which is pretty much exactly what the colors are inside. And then the UCANBE palette is a really slim cardboard palette, while the Venus XL is actually really kind of thick and chunky. So if you don't have a lot of storage space, this is really more of like a clunky palette and a little bit tougher to store. I have a couple of these in a drawer, and they pretty much take up the whole drawer, where I can fit a lot of palettes very similar to this size in it. So just something to keep in mind if you're low on storage. But other than that, they're pretty much exactly the same. This one is a little bit heavier because I think it contains more product. Let me see how much is in this one. Yeah, so each shade in the Lime Crime palette is 1.46 grams, while each shade in this one is 1 gram. So they have the same amount of shades. It's just like there's slightly more in this palette than in this one. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and open these up so you can see what they look like side by side. The Lime Crime packaging is definitely really reflective, so it makes it a little bit tougher to see the shades and to compare them. Plus, they're in a completely different order in both palettes. But as you can see, the color stories are extremely similar. Most of the shades are almost identical. There are a few that are different, which you'll see in the swatches coming up. But I just love the shades in here. I love these kind of sagey greens, the pinks and the browns and the golds. They just all kind of work together so beautifully. It's just like a soft, romantic palette overall. And as I said in the beginning of the video, I haven't really seen anything like this in any other palettes. So I do think that they have something very unique going on here. And then when it comes to the swatches, I broke them up into two different ones just because I couldn't fit each palette all the way on my arm. So the first set of swatches, as you'll see, there's a lot of almost identical shades in here. With the exception of the second one in from the right, you'll see that in the UCANBE palette, it's kind of a matte light brown shade, and in the Venus XL, it's more of a shimmery light pink. But other than that, the other shades are very, very close. And then the second set of swatches, you can see that they're also really, really close, except for the third swatch in from the left, where they're completely different colors. In the Lime Crime palette, it's more of a deep coppery shade, and then in the UCANBE, it's a shimmery mid-tone green. So that one kind of threw me for a loop a little bit, but I do really love that color in the UCANBE palette, so I'm glad that they put it in there, because there are two coppery shades that are very, very similar in the Lime Crime. So I'm glad that UCANBE added something completely different, because I do think this palette is missing that mid-tone green shimmer, so it was just perfect, I think. And then formula-wise, you have a couple different finishes going on in both of these palettes. First, you have matte shades, there's also shimmers, and then there are these kind of like toppers almost. I don't know exactly how to describe them. They're really kind of firmly pressed, hard to pick up, a little bit flaky, and they go on sheer. You probably know kind of what I'm talking about, because I've seen these types of shades in other palettes. They're really honestly not my favorite, but I think they're kind of meant to be a little bit more on the sheer side and just to be applied over another shade. And I think that UCANBE really did try to copy exactly the way the shades feel in the Lime Crime, and I think they came pretty close. The matte shades in the UCANBE palette, I would say, are not quite as smooth as Lime Crime. Lime Crime has a really super smooth matte formula that reminds me a lot of Huda Beauty. They just are so silky and super easy to blend, so I love that about them. These can be a little bit more difficult to blend, especially like the green shades, which are notoriously hard to blend as it is, but I didn't have a lot of trouble blending getting those in the Lime Crime. I did with this one, at least the mattes. But then when it comes to the regular shimmer shades, I think these are both amazing. I think the Lime Crime formula is really good. I also think this one is really good. They're super intense on the eyes. So love the shimmers in both palettes. And then when it comes to those topper ones, I actually prefer this one to the Lime Crime because the Lime Crime ones, for me at least, got hard pan really quickly. I think when I first got this palette, I swatched it once, and after that, they became almost impossible to pick up with a finger. They just kind of glazed over on the top and are really hard to pick up. And I know that sometimes that can happen from like oils in your fingers. I always try to be super careful not to have any lotion on my hands. I always wash my hands immediately before I touch the palette and make sure that they're completely dry before I go in. And I also have dry skin, so I don't have a lot of oils in my fingers to begin with, and I normally don't have issues with hard pan in palettes, but with the Lime Crime one, I definitely did, but only with those specific shades that are like that flaky texture. And in this one, so far that hasn't happened. I've swatched it a couple of times already. I've used it a few times already. So I just felt that the ones in this palette were a little bit easier to pick up than the Lime Crime, even from the start. So let's go ahead and get into the demo, and I'll show you exactly how everything applies. So first I'm starting with the UCANBE palette, and I'm picking up the shade ESP, which is like a mid-tone green matte shade. It's almost like a sage green. It's really beautiful. This shade I did have some trouble with blending out. I felt like it just kind of grabbed my eye. It's very pigmented, but once I laid it down, it just kind of didn't budge and it stayed in that one spot, and I really had to work hard to blend it all the way across. I had to keep adding more as I went, and I had this exact same thing happen with the Dominique Rustic Glam palette. If you saw that video last week, it pretty much did the exact same thing, and I think it's more the shade than anything because I have used some of the matte pinks in this palette and those blended really nicely. It's just this green one I think that's giving me trouble. And then on the Lime Crime side, I used the shade Sage, which is the comparable shade in that palette, and that one blended really nicely. Even though it was a green, I think it's formulated really well, and I had no trouble blending that out. It was very seamless, so really, really impressed with the mattes in the Lime Crime palette. Next, I took the shade Evil, which is kind of a really deep, almost like burgundy brown color. And I took that on a pencil brush and applied it to the outer V of my eye. And this matte shade actually applied really nicely with the UCANBE palette. Like I said, the only one that I've had trouble with so far is that green one that I used in my crease. This one blended really nicely. It was very pigmented. It didn't get patchy at all. So I really did like that shade in this palette. And then on the Lime Crime side, I'm using the shade Classical, which is pretty much identical in terms of the color. And I think it performed almost exactly the same as the one in the UCANBE palette. So I was really happy about that as well. And then for my lid, I picked up this really light shimmery green topper shade called Rune in the UCANBE palette. So I just used a regular flat shader brush, and it actually applied pretty well with a brush. It picked up pretty nicely. But then for more intensity, I decided to use my finger. And when I used my finger, it was super, super intense. So I was really excited about that one. I think it's just like the most gorgeous color ever. So I really love the way that that one came out. Then on the Lime Crime side, I used the shade Myth, which, as I said before, it's one of those shades that just got hard pan. So when I tried to pick it up with a brush, it pretty much didn't pick up at all, and it was super, super sheer. I don't even know if it's gonna show up on camera, but I had a really hard time making this work with a brush. So then I used my finger. I had to really dig deep into the pan just to get it up on my finger, but I was able to kind of scrape off that top layer and work with it a little bit. And even then, when I was able to pick it up, it just wasn't as vibrant as the one in the UCANBE palette, so I was a little bit disappointed with that. And then here's the finished look, and I just think this look came out so pretty. It's just so soft and easy to wear. Even though I'm using greens and some color, I don't feel like it's super bright or bold or anything. I just think it's really gorgeous. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and do a quick wear test. So I'm just gonna go about my day and see how these two hold up, one on one side and one on the other. And then I'll be back at the end to give you guys my final thoughts. Hey guys, just doing a quick check-in. We just got back from Taekwondo. We also got caught in a rainstorm, and so far my eyeshadow is still holding up really well. It's been about 4 hours now, or almost 5, so I think both eyes still look really good. So I'm gonna go ahead and do another check-in, probably like around the 8-hour mark, and I'll see you guys then. Hey guys, it's about 8:30 p.m. so I'm back for my final check-in, and I think that, you know, the eyeshadow definitely faded on both sides a little bit, but not too bad. I feel like it's still holding out pretty well. This is the UCANBE side, and I think it just looked more vibrant to begin with, so it still looks more vibrant now, but they do seem like they faded pretty evenly. So overall, my final impression is that while the mattes are easier to work with in the Lime Crime palette, I think the shimmer shades and those toppers are better in this one. So, I mean, for $13.99, I think I could work with the mattes a little bit and kind of, you know, maybe put down a layer of powder first or something just to help them blend. And really, it was mainly that green shade because I didn't have issues with the other mattes. So I think this is an awesome dupe. I'm really, really impressed with it. And I know I always seem to like the dupe better, and a few of you guys have called me out on that, but really, I think it's just because partly I'm taking price into account. For, you know, so much less money, you're getting something that performs almost as good as the original, so I just feel like it's more worth it in that way. And in some cases it performs better, like for example with the shimmer shades, or at least those topper shades. I feel like the shimmers are pretty close to each other, but the toppers in this one were just much easier to work with. And I guess I just feel like, you know, yes, the mattes are amazing in the Lime Crime palette, but is it worth $58, you know, more? I don't know, especially if it's something that you may not use all that often. This, while the color scheme is really pretty, it's not something that I feel like I would reach for every single day. I'm usually more of a neutral person overall, so for me it just makes sense to buy something less expensive because I'm not gonna get, you know, the $58 worth out of it. If this was something that I felt like I was gonna be using constantly nonstop, then it would make more sense to spend the money on it. So this is actually a palette that I kind of regret buying in a way because I've hardly touched it since I bought it, just because I have to be in the mood to wear green eyeshadow or pink eyeshadow, and that's pretty much what you're getting in here. So it's not as versatile a palette as some of my other ones, I guess you could say. So anyway, those are my final thoughts. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And also, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, definitely do that before you leave. That way you won't miss out on any future videos. I would love to have you here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.